Grandpa came back from fishing, and the HOA had already fenced his yard. He had left early for a quiet morning on the lake, but when he returned, a brand new 6-foot wooden fence was standing around his front yard. Little Johnny stared through the windshield in absolute shock, asking Grandpa if they had bought a fence without him remembering. Grandpa shook his head, having no idea what was happening. A pickup truck displaying a large HOA logo was just pulling away from the curb. Grandpa parked his truck and walked straight toward the wooden gate, only to find it securely locked from the outside. He was standing outside his own house, completely blocked from entering his own yard. A neighbor walked over to the driveway, explaining he had tried to stop the workers, but they claimed they had official permission. Grandpa frowned, asking who could have possibly given them permission. The neighbor simply shrugged, admitting they would not say. Little Johnny pointed toward a bright orange notice hanging directly from the wooden gate. The bold letters read, HOA Property Compliance Action. Grandpa read the document twice, then a third time just to make sure he was not dreaming. According to the official paper, the HOA claimed Grandpa had repeatedly ignored multiple violation letters, and his failure to comply had resulted in immediate corrective action by the board. Little Johnny looked around the tidy yard, stating he had never seen a single letter from the board. Grandpa quietly nodded, admitting he had never received anything either. Just then, the HOA president pulled into the driveway in her sedan, stepping out while holding a thick file folder. She greeted Mr. Johnson, expressing relief that he was home. Grandpa held up the orange notice, asking why on earth she had fenced his private property. She answered calmly, stating the board had officially approved the action after sending 7 separate violation notices that went completely unanswered. Grandpa smiled gently, insisting he responded to every letter he received. She handed him printed copies of the file. Every notice carried his full name and showed his street address, but something strange caught little Johnny's sharp eyes. Grandpa, look closely at the attached inspection photos. Grandpa leaned in for a better look. The violation photos showed an overgrown backyard, a broken wooden shed, and an old rusted fishing boat sitting in the grass. Little Johnny frowned deeply, pointing out that it was not their shed, and Grandpa had sold that old fishing boat several years ago. The HOA president's confident smile instantly disappeared from her face. Grandpa looked at her, suggesting she had fenced the completely wrong property. The entire neighborhood fell into absolute silence. Nobody spoke a single word as the HOA president took another long look at the inspection photos, then looked at Grandpa's neat yard, and then back at the photos again. Her previous confidence completely vanished as she whispered that this could not be right. Little Johnny pointed toward the old fishing boat in the picture, reminding everyone that Grandpa had sold that boat 3 years ago. The HOA president quickly flipped through the rest of her official file. Every single violation photo listed the same house, number 214. Grandpa slowly turned around and looked at his own house mailbox, which clearly read 241. The entire neighborhood fell silent as the truth set in. One HOA board member whispered in realization that they had been inspecting the completely wrong address for months. Grandpa crossed his arms over his chest, asking if they had really built a whole fence around the wrong yard. Before anyone could answer, a pickup truck pulled onto the street and the driver slammed on the brakes. A man stepped out and pointed at Grandpa's yard, shouting to ask what they were doing with his fence. Everyone turned around in confusion. The man explained he had paid a contractor yesterday to install a fence at his cabin, not here. Little Johnny blinked in surprise, asking if the contractor had simply delivered a 6-foot fence to the wrong address. The man shook his head, insisting he gave the worker the correct address. Suddenly, the security camera mounted on Grandpa's garage caught Little Johnny's attention. "Grandpa, our security camera!" Grandpa hurried inside the house and pulled up the morning footage on his computer screen. The video showed the contractor arriving that morning, parking his truck, and looking closely at a piece of paper in his hands. Then a black SUV pulled up beside him. Someone stepped out of the vehicle, spoke to the contractor for less than a minute, and pointed directly toward Grandpa's yard. The contractor nodded his head and immediately started building the wooden fence. The HOA president stared at the monitor, stating she had never seen that man before in her life. Little Johnny leaned closer to the screen, asking Grandpa to pause the video. Grandpa froze the frame. On the side of the black SUV was a small magnetic sign featuring 3 bold letters, HOA. The president's face turned ghost pale, admitting their board did not own that vehicle. Grandpa slowly looked at her, realizing someone wanted everyone to believe the HOA had ordered all of this. This was not an accident. Someone was framing the HOA. Nobody said a word in the room as the HOA president could not take her eyes off the security footage. The black SUV clearly was not owned by the HOA. Yet someone had deliberately used a fake logo to orchestrate the entire scene. The police arrived less than 30 minutes later to investigate. An officer watched the garage video 3 times before pausing it, zooming in on the blurry license plate. One number was still clearly visible, and the investigator smiled, stating that was enough. Within an hour, police located the SUV at a nearby storage facility. The driver admitted he had been hired by someone claiming to represent the HOA, receiving printed work orders complete with fake letterhead. The contractor genuinely believed everything was legitimate. The investigator turned toward Grandpa, explaining this was not simple vandalism, but a sophisticated real estate scam. Everyone looked confused. So he explained that if the property appeared abandoned or under active legal dispute, it would have been much easier for criminals to file fraudulent paperwork and attempt to claim the land. The HOA president lowered her head in deep shame, realizing their name was used to make the takeover look official. Grandpa nodded, understanding someone wanted the neighborhood to believe he had lost his property. Little Johnny suddenly raised his hand, pointing at the county tax records lying on the table. "Grandpa, your house is the only one on this street without a mortgage." The investigator smiled warmly, confirming the boy was exactly right. They were not after the fence. They were after the valuable land itself. A week later, every fake violation was officially removed from county records. The wooden fence was taken down, and the HOA publicly apologized to Grandpa in front of the entire community. The president stepped forward, admitting they should have verified everything before taking action. Grandpa smiled gently, replying that everyone makes mistakes, but the important part is fixing them properly. The neighbors applauded loudly. On Saturday morning, Grandpa and little Johnny returned to the exact same quiet lake. Johnny looked at Grandpa with a grin, asking if he thought they would catch another mystery today. Grandpa laughed as he baited his hook, hoping for just a base and no new fences at home. Grandpa nodded, agreeing that was the best plan he had heard all week. They cast their lines into the calm water, enjoying the peace they had almost lost, knowing that protecting the place your family calls home is what matters most.